welcome to Offsite Dirt. Today, right, we are all set up for a great conversation. And what's the title of this one? You're going to find that out. But it's all about women in construction. My name is Wille. I love all the dirt from Offsite Dirt, whether it's marketplace or high performance build, covering events or going live. But today, you're going to be ready for this one. So our women construction segment is special, and I'm joined with Audree Grubesic. Where do we start today, Audree?
That brings us to Carly Althoff, and Carly is an American architect and executive director of humanitarian nonprofit Journeyman International. After supporting disaster relief efforts in the Philippines as an architect student at California Polytech State University, she followed the calling to apply her design expertise to humanitarian aid and community resilience in developing world. I just find it fascinating that we live in America with all these great resources and all these great abilities to further our education and design, build and architecture, and yet we find this stellar woman that is doing it several thousands of miles away. I just want to welcome you here today, Carly. How are you?
Hi, Audree. Thanks so much for having me. I'm great. It's so good to speak with you both and to share a bit of my story. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So in 2017, you moved to Rwanda, East Africa. What was that experience like?
Yeah, that was unexpected. I'd always wanted to live and work overseas. I didn't expect it to be in Africa, especially right off the bat. After working a few years in the industry in California as an architect, I got the opportunity to go to East Africa to set up a regional hub for my organization, which was started by a friend of mine named Daniel at our university. So I started out as a student and got involved more and more, like you said, in the Philippines. That was sort of the gateway into this world and this sector of sort of humanitarian or community-based architecture. And yeah, in 2017, Daniel and I had a discussion about the future of the organization and how we had so many projects in Africa, all across the region of Africa, which is huge. And we didn't have anyone on the ground to really oversee and manage things. And yet there's so much capacity locally. And so he said, would you want to be the one to go out and build a network and sort of build this up locally and raise up a team, train people, and hand over operations to have a regional office? So yeah, I didn't really know how to go about that, but I said, yes, this was my opportunity to go into this and to build something that would outlast me as a foreigner. I recognized my place as an outsider in this context. And so I wanted to work with local professionals and build up a team that would be better equipped in managing, local customs and regulations and design and construction techniques and be able to facilitate these local development projects. So Rwanda was the place because we had a lot of connections there, and I just went head first into it.
I love that. And so it's funny how you base it on being local, right? And local for all the folks that you will be working with in that community is certainly local for them, but it became local to you once your backpacks hit the ground, right? And so you certainly, I don't know if stumbled is the right word, you maybe leaped, right? And so you're in this role, and it goes from volunteering to probably exploring to probably discovery, and then all that while seeing how you could take your skill set and share that based on your listening to be a leader and to allow other peoples to be leaders. So can you expand deeper? Like, let's dive into you in the new local, let's call
it. I like how you described that, local being is where your backpacks land. And yeah, it was such a change. At first, I I had a lot of adjusting to do and a lot of unlearning and relearning of, you know, cultural things. And yeah, it was like starting over after, you know, going through my education in the US and my training as an architect in California. I had to let go of a lot of what I had learned there because it just didn't apply in Rwanda or in East Africa. And so, yeah, so it's very humbling, and I had to just open myself up to learning from the friends and the relationships that I developed over time in Rwanda, and you know, different professionals that I would interact with and work with on a few projects that I started out with in that region of the world. And it was just such a beautiful learning experience, and sort of a breaking down of my understanding of what architecture is and what construction is, where I learned, you know, that people just think differently, and it's not wrong, and there's no wrong or right, it's just different. And that was something that I think one of my biggest takeaways that I try to share with people in my homeland in the US or in kind of the global North context is that, like, we don't have the right answers for this context, and we as foreigners, when we come into like the global South or different countries which are developing at a different pace, we need to humble ourselves and kind of let go of what we know, because it's not always the right way in this other context. So that was kind of my introduction to what this local idea meant. And when working in the architecture and development industry, also in a place and in a country in Rwanda, which is developing at such an incredibly rapid pace, and there's always construction going on, and there's always innovation, and there's so much growth in this place, and I had to kind of adapt very quickly, and yeah, it was definitely humbling, but I think over time, and this has been like 6 years of time at this point, where I'm still learning now, but I feel like I've grown in the way of kind of my approach to working in different contexts in many different countries over the years. I've learned to just come in with an open mind and an open heart to what the local people have to teach me.
That is one of the most beautiful statements I've heard all day, is about opening your heart and staying humble and knowing that there is no wrong or right. There's just a way of finding yourself through it. And I love the tagline that we have above us, build what matters most. So coming from the architect and the design element of walking into these different countries and these, you know, vulnerable and diverse developments, what was your takeaway from maybe just one of those experiences?
Well, I think an overarching theme that I think has touched on most of the projects that I've been involved in, and a lot of our or a lot of my colleagues have worked on. It's a volunteer-based organization mainly, and so I work with both local architects in different countries, as well as international volunteers, students, professionals across the built environment industries. And what we've all learned together, I think, is that that design and building in many different countries happens at a different pace. And so trying to think of an example, well, maybe my first project that I got involved with in Rwanda, I was so eager going into it, and I went through this process of design and kind of remotely working with a local team, and then eventually I was able to move there and be on site, on the ground in this very remote village for, you know, days at a time, and I got to know the community and start to realize that, wow, things are not happening as quickly as I want them to. And I had this idea of what the project should look like in my mind, and that over time was broken down, and I started to, you know, bring more volunteers from internationally, and also connect more with local builders or engineers in the country, and even the community members themselves were very involved in the design process, bringing different ideas to the table and reworking this design, and then trying to bring in funding for construction. And as all the pieces were falling together, I was just noticing my idea of what should happen started to kind of break down, and the pace that I was working started to slow a bit. And that was frustrating at first, having to just like, let go of what I thought was supposed to happen. And by this month, by the end of this year, we should have, the site should be graded. We should start with foundation. We should have retaining walls built and all of this. But it took years longer than I had expected. And it's still, with this particular project I'm thinking of, we still haven't built the building that I designed in 2016. And so that was something, but we've built so many other things around that site that were more appropriate and more timely. And so a lot of the funding had to be kind of redistributed to build like a latrine instead of a community center, or classrooms instead of a church, or whatever. The things just kind of had to be reassessed as we went on over the years. And things happen that you don't expect, like land disputes or community disagreements, or reworking of what the project should become, or what the community really wants. And so myself and the other volunteers that have worked with me on this particular project in Rwanda have had to kind of adapt to the changing needs of the context. So that's one thing that I think was a big takeaway for me.
It's so
I try to apply this to future.
Carly, it's so interesting because we're so conditioned in the United States to be tactful with a build schedule, right? We've got investors, we got money, we got draws, we got things. You better get your stuff in, you got to get your permits. And then you're in an environment where everybody is community and has to grow. And I think it's phenomenal. And I'm just really curious, how is the communication delivered? And then how are you able to find these other experts, these other engineers, and these other people that came into the project? How did that happen?
Well, communication, to dive into that question, I have found communication is more efficient for this particular kind of work when it's informal. And so there are certain ways that I was trained, I think, in my background, my education, where communication should look a certain way, like you should use emails, you should use all of these technologies and tools that were given in our industry. Like coming from California, we have certain protocols that we're following, but then you get into working in Africa with people who might not have a computer with email, or like might not have access to certain tools that I have, or might not want to use these like online, Slack or Trello, or like all of these like project management resources. And so they, quick WhatsApp messages and like different ways, different ways and different pace of communicating, like call directly to your supplier, or like, send a WhatsApp or a Facebook message or something to someone that has only access to that, or like might have trouble getting some like a network signal in the village that they're working from. You have to kind of use all these different ways of communicating and different technologies just to get access to a person. And especially more if you're on site and you're trying to just simply reach that person that doesn't have a network connection. Or I think there's just more in-person, face-to-face communication than there would be in different contexts that I'm coming from. And so, yeah, a lot of that face-to-face interaction is so important. And otherwise, it's just like really informal, quick communication. And that was a big change too. But yeah, people, to answer the other question, people often get involved through our kind of structure as an organization. So Journeyman International is kind of a platform of connecting volunteer professionals and experts from anywhere in the world to, local community-based organizations working with people in whatever country or context, usually in a vulnerable situation, like if there's poverty or disasters or conflict. That's often the situation that we're going into, and connecting these volunteers, sometimes from the local region, sometimes from overseas. And so volunteers apply on our website to get involved, or architecture firms or construction firms that want to do pro bono work. They reach out to us through our website, and apply and send in their information, and then we connect them based on their interests and their expertise to the most appropriate need. And so we're kind of that platform of connecting and then project managing things forward through the design and construction process. Depending on the scope and the time frame and the availability of the volunteers, we kind of manage appropriately. And we, being myself and I have an incredible team now in Rwanda of project managers and architects who are they're locally trained, local professionals, and they're managing volunteers and build projects all across the continent and beyond. And so they're doing most of that, facilitating the project delivery. And I'm sort of just overseeing that process and helping to kind of connect people. And that's my favorite part of the job, is like making the connections and just setting people free to do the good work, and seeing beautiful projects come to life.
Wow. If we can have a better question to set that up, we can't, because you delivered it on your own. You're like, this is my favorite part, right? And then earlier on, you had that layout of this is different. So when construction starts, we have meetings. We have meetings to have meetings. We have meetings to have meetings to have meetings.
Yeah.
And then we have these huge spreadsheets, and then we have plots of surveys, and then we have geo studies and all that. And you're like, I mean, you embodied the phrase, meet them where they are. And, obviously, like Audree, magnified, build what matters most. There was this that was going to be the deliverable. Everything else that wasn't on that plate got delivered. You had the salad, the soup, the appetizers, and the dessert. You haven't got to the entree yet, but all the stuff is a perfect flavor. And it sounds like the right people are finding you, and not just you, obviously the whole team. They're finding the place to put their talents. So I don't know if it exists. Construction without borders, just like we've had doctors without borders, but you brought the local to the global. So let's talk future then, right? You've been doing this for a minute. I think your wings are going to carry you into many more years of this. So where are we going to see things happening? What does that future look like? And you said the people are finding you, but create that connection with how that could most be magnified. If you could picture the next 5 years of impact and happiness in an area, throw it out there. Let's see the dreamscape.
Oh, such a great question. And actually, I've been thinking about this a lot recently after being challenged in some recent conversations about what our emerging industry of sort of humanitarian architecture should look like in the future, how to ethically approach this, and how to involve the global south and the developing nations and their industries in the development of the overall sector. And so I think Journeyman as an organization is well positioned to contribute to this growth and to really be a leader in the growth of the industry in a sustainable way. And one way that I'm trying to sort of experiment with sustainability and business models and expansion is by kind of continuing to build out these locally run branch offices in different regions of the world, which, you know, empower and train local professionals to manage architecture and construction projects in their own regions, and sustain themselves while still providing a service affordably to communities that need it, that might not be able to afford, you know, a star architecture firm. And so, yeah, so I think the Rwanda regional office is just the first step in the future of our organization and the future of the industry at large. And what I'm trying to do now is kind of hand off the ownership of that local office to my Rwanda team, and kind of step out of that and build another regional hub in actually Southeast Asia is the next location that we're really looking at. And so I've been sort of backing away from management of the Rwanda firm because it's able to operationally sustain itself, and that's the idea. And we're trying to make it more financially sustainable as well by kind of using this hybrid financial model of local income being generated while also being partially funded by donations from the US charity that we have. And so having sort of a hybrid where we're able to fund part of our organization through charitable donations, and thus decreasing the cost to these communities, and I mean very poor conditions, they can have more affordable access to good quality architecture, while we're still able to charge a little bit of a fee to value our own service and to bring dignity to the designers themselves, and trying to kind of figure out a balance of how to create a financial sustainability. And now I'm starting to take this model to different regions of the world. So now I'm looking at Indonesia being the next base, and the founder and myself have really been digging into building up this network. And I've been spending a lot of time in Indonesia kind of working with projects and universities and professionals in the architecture world there, where there's a lot of need, there's a lot of opportunity, and there's a thriving architectural sort of ecosystem that we're starting to tap into in that part of the world. And so ideally that would be our next regional base. And in order to keep expanding like this in the leanest way possible, we're trying to keep our core teams small, but then involve pro bono and volunteers and universities in that region as well. But yeah, so at the moment I'm simultaneously starting to build out these networks, and now this new network in Southeast Asia, while still kind of fundraising to support our kind of baseline office that we're running in Africa, and continue to expand that, and see how we can kind of grow our organization while still staying lean. So it's all business models and experimenting, which is super fun and creative, and I'm enjoying, you know, building out these networks and connecting with incredibly talented professionals in different regions. And so yeah, ideally the big picture future of Journeyman would be not that we would operate as an insulated US-based NGO going out into the world, but building local hubs of professionals and experts in the industry who have a passion for humanitarian work and who want to give back to communities in their own regions, and having these small networks being run in an effective, in a sustainable way. And yeah, like maybe Southeast Asia is next, maybe Latin America is next, maybe the Middle East and Europe, and we'll see. But it's kind of a step-by-step process of building these local hubs and seeing how they grow themselves, and kind of handing off ownership as we go.
Wow. What a beautiful, beautiful message and organization. Build what matters most What an inspiring woman in construction you are, Carly. I am thrilled that we had the opportunity to hear about what you're doing, and I know Southeast Asia is going to happen. It's going to fall into place, because when you're making it about people and the earth and a humanitarian focus, you can't lose. Thank you so much for being here on Offsite Dirt. Mark, as always, it's such a pleasure to be here and have these conversations. These are the ones that make the world a better place. Carly, thank you again for being here with Journeyman International.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to speak with you. And yeah, this is so much fun. Thanks for listening.